"I liked you from the start," the drunk Apache girl confessed. "Then why did you hide it?" The cowboy asked. The land where the story begins was wide and quiet, stretching under an open sky that changed colors with the day. Dusty roads ran between ranch fences and small homes, some built long ago, some newer, standing close to the edge of the Apache reservation. Life there moved slowly. People knew each other's names, their habits, and sometimes even their secrets. Yet some things were never spoken aloud. The girl grew up on that land. She was Apache, raised by her grandmother after her parents passed away when she was still young. Her grandmother was strict but kind, a woman who believed in strength, silence, and dignity. From her, the girl learned how to listen more than she spoke, how to read people's eyes, and how to carry pain without showing it. She learned that feelings were powerful, and powerful things should be handled carefully. She was not the kind of girl who laughed loudly or drew attention. She worked at a small roadside cafe near the highway, a place where locals stopped for coffee and passing travelers paused for rest. Her hands were always busy, pouring drinks, wiping counters, taking orders. Her face was calm, but her thoughts were often far away. She noticed everything, even when others thought she didn't. The cowboy came into her life without any announcement. One morning, he walked into the cafe wearing a worn hat and boots covered in dry dirt. He worked at a ranch not far from the reservation, handling horses, fences, and long days under the sun. He was quiet, polite, and never rushed. When he ordered coffee, he looked her in the eye and said thank you, like it mattered. That first meeting was simple. Nothing dramatic happened. No long talk, no sudden connection that others could see, but something shifted inside her. She noticed the way he stood, relaxed but strong. The way he spoke, calm and careful, as if he chose his words before letting them leave his mouth. She told herself it meant nothing. People came and went every day, but he came back the next morning, and the morning after that. Soon, his presence became part of her routine. He always ordered the same thing. He always paid and left a small tip, never too much, never too little. Sometimes he nodded to her. Sometimes he smiled. Sometimes he asked how her day was going. His questions were simple, but they felt real. She never shared much in return. "Fine," she would say. Or "busy today." She kept her answers short, her voice steady. Inside, her heart reacted differently. Every time he walked in, she felt more awake. Every time he left, the room felt a little emptier. The girl had learned early in life not to expect too much from people outside her world. She had seen how easily others misunderstood her culture, her silence, her way of being. Some thought quiet meant weak. Others thought it meant unfriendly. She had been judged before, and those experiences had taught her to keep distance. The cowboy, on the other hand, did not push. He never asked personal questions. He never tried to cross boundaries she did not open. That made him different from others. It also made it harder for her to understand what he felt. Weeks passed, then months. Sometimes she saw him outside the cafe, fixing something on his truck or talking with other ranch workers. He always seemed the same, steady and focused. When their eyes met, he nodded. She nodded back, that was all. Yet inside her, a quiet feeling was growing. It was not loud or fast. It was slow, like a river moving under the surface. She thought about him when she woke up. She noticed the sound of his truck when it pulled into the lot. She felt disappointed on the days he didn't come. She told no one about this. Not her grandmother, not her friends. She told herself it was better that way. Feelings, she believed, could make people careless, and carelessness led to pain. The cowboy also noticed her, though he would never say it out loud. He admired the way she handled her work without complaint, the way she listened more than she spoke, the way she seemed strong without trying to prove it. He respected her space, but part of him wondered what thoughts lived behind her quiet eyes. He sensed there was more to her story, but he didn't believe it was his place to ask. He had grown up learning that some doors only open when invited. Their connection stayed unspoken, balanced on small moments. A shared smile, a brief pause when their hands brushed while passing a cup, a look that lasted half a second longer than necessary. The girl felt torn between her heart and her fear. Part of her wanted to say something, anything, to let him know she noticed him too. Another part warned her to stay quiet. What if he saw her only as a friendly face at the cafe? What if she misunderstood his kindness? What if she opened her heart and found nothing waiting on the other side? So she chose silence. She hid her feelings the same way she hid her sadness, her loneliness, and her hopes for something more. She believed that if she didn't speak, she couldn't be rejected. If she didn't hope, she couldn't be disappointed. The cowboy sensed the distance but didn't know how to cross it. He respected her too much to assume. He told himself that if she wanted him to know more, she would say something. Until then, he would keep things as they were. Life went on around them. Seasons changed. The air grew colder, then warmer again. People came and went from the cafe. Ranch work grew heavier, then lighter. Still, their silent connection remained, unbroken but untouched. Both believed they were protecting themselves. Neither realized that silence, too, could hurt. By the end of this part of the story, nothing has been said aloud, but everything has already begun. As time moved forward, the quiet space between them began to feel heavier. It was not empty anymore. It was full of things unsaid. Every day they saw each other, and every day they chose not to speak about what truly mattered. On the surface, everything looked normal. Inside, both were slowly changing. The girl continued her routine at the cafe. She woke before sunrise, helped her grandmother prepare breakfast, and drove the old car down the long road to work. The cafe smelled of coffee and warm bread in the mornings, and she liked that part of the day the most. It was calm, before people filled the room with noise. Still, even in those quiet hours, her thoughts often drifted to him. She wondered where he was on the days he did not come. She imagined him working under the sun, fixing fences, riding horses, or driving across open land. Sometimes she caught herself smiling at nothing and she quickly stopped, afraid someone might notice. She did not want questions. She did not want to explain feelings she herself did not fully understand. When the cowboy came in, she felt a small shift inside her chest. She became more aware of her movements, her words, even her breathing. She wanted to seem calm, the way she always was, but her heart did not always listen. She told herself again and again that this was only kindness, nothing more. Yet her heart did not believe that lie. The cowboy noticed changes too. He noticed how her eyes sometimes softened when she looked at him, and how quickly she looked away afterward. He noticed the pause before she answered his questions, as if she was choosing her words carefully. These small details stayed with him long after he left the cafe. He wanted to ask her more about herself, but something held him back. He did not want to make her uncomfortable. He had seen people in town make careless comments about the reservation and its people, and he did not want to be like them. He respected her silence, even when it confused him. Sometimes, when he sat alone with his coffee, he thought about what might happen if he said something honest. What if he told her he enjoyed seeing her every morning? What if he asked her to talk after work just once? But then doubt would follow. What if she thought he was overstepping? What if he ruined the quiet understanding they already had? So he stayed quiet too. Their silence began to shape their days. The girl started working extra shifts, partly to stay busy, partly to avoid thinking too much. At home, her grandmother noticed her distraction. She asked gentle questions, but the girl always gave short answers. She did not want to worry her. She also did not know how to explain a feeling that had no clear shape. At night, she lay awake listening to the sounds outside the house. Wind moving through trees, dogs barking in the distance, cars passing far away. In those moments, she allowed herself to think freely. She imagined what it would be like to talk to him without fear, to laugh, to be seen not just as a quiet girl from the reservation, but as herself. Then morning would come, and she would put those thoughts away. The cowboy filled his days with work. He believed that staying busy would keep his mind clear. But even while working, her image appeared in his thoughts. He remembered the way she held a cup, careful but confident. The way she listened as if words mattered. He had met many people in his life, but few stayed in his mind the way she did. Sometimes other workers teased him about how often he went to the cafe. He laughed it off and said he liked the coffee. That was true, but not the whole truth. He did not share more. He was not the kind of man who spoke easily about feelings. There were moments when the distance between them felt too much to carry. One afternoon, the cafe was nearly empty. Rain tapped softly against the windows and the air felt still. He stood at the counter, holding his cup longer than usual. She stood across from him, wiping the counter slowly. For a moment, it felt like the right time. He opened his mouth, ready to say something more personal. She looked up at him, her eyes full of questions she did not ask. Then someone walked in, breaking the moment. The chance slipped away. Both felt it. Neither said anything. After that day, things felt slightly different, not worse but more tense. Like a string pulled too tight, she avoided looking at him for long. He came at different times, unsure if his presence made things harder for her. They were both trying to protect the other, without realizing they were creating more distance. The girl started telling herself that this was for the best. That some feelings were meant to stay hidden. That life was simpler without expectations. She reminded herself of past disappointments, of moments when hope had led to pain. She believed silence was safer. The cowboy told himself something similar. He believed that if she wanted more, she would show it clearly. Until then, he would not push. He believed respect meant waiting, but waiting had its own cost. Days turned into weeks again. The town stayed the same, but their inner worlds grew louder. Every small interaction carried weight. Every missed chance left a quiet ache behind. They stood close, yet far apart, both thinking the same thing in different ways, both afraid to be the first to speak. And so, the distance between them was no longer empty. It was filled with fear, hope, and a truth that was slowly becoming impossible to ignore. The day everything changed did not begin with any sign that it would be different. The sun rose the same way it always did, slow and quiet. The girl followed her routine, helping her grandmother in the morning and then driving to work. She felt tired, but she did not know why. Maybe it was the weight of many quiet days. Maybe it was the feeling of holding too much inside for too long. At the cafe, the day passed slowly. There were fewer customers than usual. The air felt heavy, like it does before a storm. She worked without thinking, her hands moving on their own. She tried not to look at the door too often, but she noticed every sound outside, every engine passing by. He did not come in the morning. For some reason, that bothered her more than it should have. She told herself not to think about it. He had his own life, his own work. Still, the absence felt louder than his presence ever had. Later that evening, there was a small community gathering not far from town. It was not a big event, just people coming together to talk, eat, and forget their worries for a while. Her grandmother encouraged her to go. She said it would be good to be around others, to laugh a little. The girl agreed, even though she was not in the mood. She changed into clean clothes and tied her hair back. When she arrived, she stayed near the edge at first, watching more than joining. People talked in small groups. Music played softly in the background. Someone offered her a drink and she accepted, thinking it would help her relax. She did not usually drink much. She liked being in control of her thoughts. But that night her mind felt crowded. She took a few small sips, then a few more. The tight feeling in her chest loosened just a little. The noise around her faded into something softer. Then she saw him. He stood a short distance away, talking with someone she did not know. He looked the same as always, calm and steady. When his eyes met hers, he paused. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then he nodded, surprised but glad to see her. She felt something rise inside her, fast and unexpected. A mix of relief, warmth, and courage she did not know she had. Before she could stop herself, she walked toward him. They stood facing each other, closer than they had ever been before. The noise around them seemed to fade again. He asked how she was doing. She answered honestly for once. She said she was tired. He said he understood. They talked about small things at first: work, the weather, the gathering. But there was a strange energy between them, like both knew this moment mattered. She felt the warmth from the drink in her body, but more than that, she felt the weight of everything she had held back. Her words came out before she could think them through. She told him she liked him. She said she had liked him from the very start. The sentence hung in the air between them. Once spoken, it could not be taken back. He stared at her, unsure if he had heard correctly. His heart began to beat faster. He had imagined this moment before, but never like this. Not so sudden, not so honest. She felt exposed, like she had stepped into bright light after years of shadow. Her face grew warm. She looked down, afraid to see his reaction. The truth had finally escaped, and she did not know what would happen next. He took a slow breath. His surprise turned into confusion, not anger. He asked her why. Not why she liked him, but why she hid it. His voice was calm, but there was hurt beneath it. He wanted to understand. Her eyes filled with emotion. The drink had loosened her guard, but the feelings were real. She told him she was afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of hoping for something that might never come, afraid of losing the quiet connection they already had. She told him she had learned early in life to protect herself by staying silent. Silence had always felt safer than rejection. He listened carefully. He did not interrupt. He realized in that moment that his own silence had been a choice too. He had waited for a sign, believing patience was respect, but maybe patience had also been fear. He admitted that he cared for her as well, that he noticed her from the beginning, that he looked forward to seeing her every day, that he stayed quiet because he did not want to cross a line she had not drawn. They stood there, sharing truths that had waited too long to be spoken. The world around them continued as usual, but for them, time felt slower. She felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief because the truth was finally out. Sadness because she realized how much time had been lost to fear. She apologized for hiding. He shook his head and said they were both to blame. The drink had made her brave, but it also made her tired. The weight of the moment settled in. She said she needed some air. He offered to walk with her. Outside, the night was cool and quiet. They stood under the open sky side by side. There was no need to fill the silence right away. This silence felt different, honest, shared. He asked her what she wanted now. She thought for a long moment. She said she did not know yet. She only knew she did not want to hide anymore. He said he felt the same. They did not make promises. They did not rush into anything. They simply stood there, understanding that something important had shifted. A door that had been closed was now open. When they went their separate ways that night, both knew things would never be the same. The truth had been spoken. The silence had been broken. And even though the path ahead was uncertain, it felt more real than the quiet distance they had lived with for so long. The days after that night felt different for both of them. Nothing around them had changed, yet everything inside them had. The town was the same. The cafe still smelled of coffee. The ranch work still began before sunrise. But the silence that once stood between them was no longer heavy. It had been replaced by awareness. The girl woke up the next morning with a clear head and a tired heart. She remembered everything she had said. There was no confusion, no regret about the truth she had spoken. Still, she felt nervous. She wondered if she had said too much or if she had said it in the wrong way. The courage from the night before was gone, replaced by careful thoughts. Her grandmother noticed the change right away. The girl moved slower, more thoughtful. She asked if everything was okay. The girl hesitated, then simply said she had a lot on her mind. Her grandmother nodded. She did not push. She believed that some things had to be figured out alone. At work, the girl tried to focus, but her thoughts kept drifting. She replayed the cowboy's words in her mind. He had not turned away. He had listened. That alone meant more than she could explain. Still, she did not know what would come next. When the cafe door opened later that morning, her heart jumped. It was him. He walked in just as he always did, but his eyes searched for her immediately. When they met, something passed between them. Not excitement, not fear, but understanding. He smiled gently. She returned the smile, smaller but real. Their conversation was different now. Still simple, still quiet, but more open. He asked how she was feeling. She answered honestly. She said she was thinking a lot. He said he was too. They did not talk about the night directly, not yet. But it was there, sitting between them, no longer hidden. After work, he waited outside for her, not too close, not too far. He asked if she would like to walk for a bit. She hesitated only a second before agreeing. They walked along a dirt road near the edge of town. The sky was wide above them. The air was calm. For the first time, they were alone together without distractions. He spoke first. He said he had been thinking about what she shared. He said he respected her honesty and her fear. He admitted that he had been afraid too, afraid of misunderstanding her silence, afraid of pushing too hard, afraid of losing something good before it even began. She listened carefully. She felt lighter hearing his words. She told him that she had always felt different, like she had to protect herself more than others. She spoke about growing up with loss, about learning to stay strong by staying quiet. She said that speaking her feelings had always felt risky. He told her that he admired her strength, even when she didn't see it in herself. He said he never thought her quietness meant distance. To him, it meant depth. As they walked, they shared pieces of themselves slowly. There was no rush, no pressure to say everything at once, just honesty offered gently. The girl realized something important during that walk. She realized that hiding her feelings had not protected her as much as she believed. It had kept her safe from rejection, yes, but it had also kept her alone. She understood now that fear could protect, but it could also limit. The cowboy came to his own realization. He understood that waiting too long could look like disinterest, even when it was. He learned that respect did not always mean silence. Sometimes respect meant being brave enough to speak. They agreed on one thing without saying it out loud. They would move forward slowly. No labels. No promises they were not ready to keep. Just honesty, step by step. Over the next few weeks, they began spending more time together. Nothing dramatic. Coffee after her shift, short walks, simple conversations. They learned each other's habits, their likes, their worries. There were still moments of doubt. Moments when the girl wondered if she was opening herself too much. Moments when the cowboy worried about crossing lines he still didn't fully understand. But now, instead of pulling away, they talked about it. One evening, the girl shared her fear of being judged, of being seen as someone who didn't belong in his world. He listened and told her that worlds could overlap without losing their roots. That respect mattered more than difference. Another time, he shared his fear of saying the wrong thing, of hurting her without meaning to. She told him that honesty, even when imperfect, mattered more than silence. Their bond grew stronger through these small truths, not through big gestures but through steady presence. The town noticed, of course. People always do. Some looked with curiosity, some with doubt. The girl felt those looks, and for a moment old fears returned. But this time she did not face them alone. The cowboy never tried to shield her or speak for her. He stood beside her, steady and calm. That quiet support meant more than words. One afternoon she invited him to her home. It was a big step for her. Her grandmother welcomed him with polite warmth. She saw the way he looked at her granddaughter with respect and care. She said nothing, but her approval showed in small ways. Later, when they were alone, the girl felt a deep sense of peace. She realized she was no longer hiding this part of her life. And even though that felt scary, it also felt right. There were still challenges ahead. They both knew that. Understanding did not erase differences, but it created space to talk about them. By the end of this part of their journey, something important had changed. They were no longer two people circling each other in silence. They were two people choosing honesty, even when it was uncomfortable. The truth had not solved everything, but it had given them a place to stand together instead of apart. The weeks that followed felt calm, but not easy. Calm because the truth was no longer hidden. Not easy because real life never becomes perfect just because feelings are shared. Both of them understood that what they were building needed care, patience, and honesty. The girl slowly grew more confident in herself. She still spoke softly, still listened more than she talked, but inside she felt stronger. She no longer carried the heavy question of what if alone. Knowing that he cared gave her comfort, but it also made her more aware of her own worth. She began to see that her feelings were not a weakness. They were simply part of being human. At the cafe, she noticed how different her days felt now. When he came in, she did not feel nervous in the same way. She felt present. They talked more naturally, sometimes even laughing. The small moments they shared no longer felt fragile. They felt real. The cowboy also changed in small but important ways. He became more open, more willing to say what was on his mind. He learned that speaking honestly did not make him careless. It made him clear. He stopped guessing what she felt and started listening to what she said. They continued meeting outside of work. Sometimes they walked. Sometimes they sat quietly, watching the sky change colors as the sun went down. There were evenings when they did not say much at all, but the silence no longer felt empty. It felt shared. One day, the girl spoke about her past more deeply than before. She talked about losing her parents, about growing up too fast, about learning to depend on herself. She did not speak with anger, only honesty. He listened closely, understanding that these experiences shaped her fear and her strength. He shared his own story too. He spoke about his simple upbringing, about learning responsibility early, about the pressure he felt to always be steady and strong. He admitted that sometimes he didn't know how to express emotions, even when he felt them deeply. Through these conversations, they learned that both had been shaped by quiet struggles. Different paths, but similar weight. There were moments when doubts returned. The girl sometimes wondered if their worlds were too different. The cowboy sometimes worried about whether he truly understood her culture and experiences. Instead of letting these doubts grow in silence, they spoke about them. One evening, she told him she was afraid that one day he might walk away because things felt too complicated. He did not dismiss her fear. He told her he could not promise perfection, but he could promise effort and honesty. That mattered to her. Another time, he asked her if she felt pressured by the attention their connection was getting in town. She admitted that it was difficult at times. He asked how he could support her better. That question alone showed how far they had come. The girl's grandmother watched all of this quietly. One night, she spoke to her granddaughter gently. She said that strength was not only about surviving alone, but also about choosing who to trust. Those words stayed with the girl. As the seasons began to change again, the relationship between them felt settled but alive. Not rushed, not forced, just steady. They never made big promises, they never spoke about forever. What they chose instead was simple and powerful. They chose to keep showing up, to keep talking, to keep listening. One afternoon, they stood together near the open land where the town met the reservation. The wind moved softly through the grass. The girl thought about how far she had come from the quiet fear she once carried. She had not changed who she was. She had simply allowed herself to be seen. The cowboy looked at her and realized that liking someone was not just about feeling. It was about respect, patience, and the willingness to grow. He was grateful that she had spoken that night, even if it took courage she did not know she had. She looked at him and understood something important. Hiding had protected her heart for a long time, but speaking had allowed it to heal. Their story did not end with a perfect moment or a dramatic promise. It ended with a quiet understanding. That love in real life often grows slowly. That honesty can be uncomfortable, but it opens doors silence never will. They walked forward together, not certain of everything, but certain of one thing. They would no longer hide what mattered, and that choice changed everything.